upward. It carried him to cities now dust and gone. It brought him at last to a land of plant and a world to build. Without the wheel, the face of the earth would have been empty of man. He would have remained crouched in his dark caves, away from the sun and joys of existing upright, and not ready to journey to faraway places. I had just completed some research for my next book when the gentleman sitting next to me, who had slept most of the trip, introduced himself as John Redden, an aircraft designer. I introduced myself as Stuart Reynolds and told him that I make my living writing adventure novels and that I had come to Indiana to write a book about stock car racing. He thought the subject sounded exciting and wanted to know what the story would be about. I told him that it would be about a new breed of men and a relatively new type of auto racing which in just a few years has become the second largest spectator sport in America. It was to be a story about a young race rookie, Conan Moose Myers. And the story would begin on a dusty dirt road. Seemingly unimportant, insignificant, and almost unreal for those in the air, but for those on the ground, the story is real. A story of men and machines, a love story about the men who build them and drive them, a story of adventure, agony, tears, tires, dents, and determination, of danger and death. It's the story of a sport that seems sort of savage, with a future more intriguing than its past. It almost seems as if Mother Nature has accepted the roar of engines as one more sign of spring. For it occurs each year as surely as the green grass grows and the birds begin to build. From what I had just seen, I was arriving just in time. For the crew which I had been corresponding with for the past few months about the book was just itching to get that car out on the track for its first trial run of the season. And I couldn't wait to get out to the track to see this car, which I heard so much about. I finally met the men who were going to unfold for me the secrets in the struggle for stock car supremacy. Jim Stovall, owner. Don Gruden, mechanic. And Bill Henderson, body man. And I was only minutes away from meeting Moose, Conan Moose Myers. One of the hottest stock jockeys who ever shifted gears. As if he were as much a part of that car as the engine, trailing a stench of exhaust fumes and burning rubber as if this very moment were his destiny. The entire winter had been spent tuning this machine to balance as delicately as a fine Swiss watch. My first impression of Moose was that he didn't exactly look the part. I mean, he didn't look like a rugged race driver, but perhaps more like the friendly neighborhood meat cutter, shy and modest about his unusual skill behind the wheel. A fine group of gentlemen, certainly a credit to the sport they represented. Now that I had met the crew, the next step would be to learn the history and the background of the team. And so that night, after I had checked into my hotel, I went to Jim Stovall's office at the R.W. Kane Construction Company, of which he is president, and we began from the beginning. I wanted to know just how and why this unique racing team had gotten its start. Jim explained that he had always had more than a spectator's interest in stock car racing and wanted to build one of his own. He wanted to build a car with class, spirit, and the ability to come through when the pressure was on, one that would win. But the car was of no value unless it had a driver that possessed the same qualities. And so Jim began his own talent search, traveling to speedways all over the Midwest. sunny Sunday afternoon when he found himself at Avila, Indiana, at the Toledo Speedway. Moose was a rookie then, in the true sense of the word. Jim spotted him in a red 57 Chevy number 51 Special, and his first impression was to have been highly favorable.
For some reason, Stuart, Moose stood out in that crowd. He was colorful, good-natured, even-tempered, and a real professional showman. His driving seemed to reflect his character, and I liked it. He had the qualities I was looking for. He drove determined, almost like the dust was his destiny.
Midway through the season, Moose realized that his car didn't seem to share his enthusiasm for the sport. So he decided to build a new one. He saw an ad in a motorsport magazine for an engine that seemed to fit his requirements. So, together with determination and his entire savings account, he traveled to Lincoln, Nebraska and bought it. Followed Moose around the circuit for the remaining weeks of the season, watching this determined young rookie fighting for a win. And win he did at last, on the final day of the season. It wasn't much of a thrill, as only 3 cars completed the race, but it was a victory, and his first one. Absolutely sure of his man, Jim approached Moose, introduced himself, and said, "Next year we'll build you a real race car." And build the car they did. The 4 of them, it was Moose Myers, Bill Henderson, and Don Pruden, that Jim Stovall had brought together. This was to be the secret of his success on the Speedway. Those 4 were a special breed indeed. They made up the nucleus of a most unique racing team, and they had but one goal, not to race for money alone, but for the sport of it. They had mutually accepted a special challenge, one that could only be found in racing. It was their aim to make themselves worthy of the sport they loved, and their motto would be work hard, drive fast, and win proud. It was late October. For the fans, the fun was over. For car owners, drivers, and mechanics, the time to overhaul cars, perhaps build new engines. The changing of the leaves was Mother Nature's warning that winter was not far away. And this promised to be a winter of long nights for Jim and his crew, as they were beginning from scratch. A whole new chapter was about to be written into their lives, and they met and talked like a group of young astronauts about to be launched into their first orbit. The first step in the building of a stock car is to find a solid automobile, and like basic military training, it must be stripped of its personality, made equal, and then reshaped to fit its purpose. As the days grew shorter and the nights grew longer, winter winds were drifting snow on speedways, the work went on. The crew worked with such precision and care but it would seem as if the vehicle they were inventing would someday send their man to the moon. As a driver and not a mechanic, there were times when Moose didn't really have a whole lot to do. Oh, he made occasional suggestions as to how he would like to see certain innovations on the car, but normally at about 10 o'clock every night, it was difficult to distinguish the wind howling through the sheet metal roof and Moose's constant snoring. It was amazing how fast it was believed that he could go to sleep anywhere at any time and at any given moment would be lost to the world of reality and into a world of his own. A world where he was a Richard Petty, a Junior Johnson, Freddie Lorenzen, or an A.J. Foyt. Every night at about the same time while the crew worked, Moose would be at Darlington, South Carolina, Riverside, California, Atlanta, Daytona International Speedway, or at Milwaukee. He was in a world where racing is not just a sport, but a big business. The cost of racing a car for one season, about 50 races, is as high as $80,000. Of course, that part of the dream he never quite got to cruise to tell Jim about. Moose was in a world where as much as $30,000 was waiting for the man who finished first. What happened in between was sometimes tragic. Usually expensive, and always heartbreaking. It was a world where auto manufacturers justify the cost of racing by arguing that competition in speed sells cars, and they're right. A car failure at Daytona one year led a major automaker to modify an internal engine refinement, which now makes possible less engine wear and higher speeds. Racing also provides auto safety experts with valuable information for the safety in our cars of tomorrow. Occasionally, Moose tried to find his way back to reality when he found himself living in an age gone by. And an exciting age it must have been, but it just wasn't for him. Those old cars just didn't seem to offer him the challenge he was looking for. History was made in those cars, though, now silent witnesses who played key roles in the mad and merry days of yesteryear. Barney Oldfield traveled behind the wheel of his mighty Mercedes-Benz at Daytona Beach back in 1910 at an unheard-of speed of 131.75 miles per hour. World War I was triggered when Archduke Franz Ferdinand and Duchess Sophie Chertok were assassinated in their brand-new Graft stick. In 1931, a Chevrolet could be purchased for about $580. And the Saturday Evening Post called the first horseless carriage an automobile, people laughed. Today, the automobile is no longer a luxury as it was in those days, but a necessity, a way of life. The auto has been the most frequent cause of death. So today and in the future, as a direct result of racing, scenes such as this are being minimized. The Speedway was responsible for seat belts and disc brakes and other safety innovations once found only in race cars. Now they're becoming standard equipment in all passenger cars. This machine that so excites the human being that he would steal, cheat, lie, or even leave his wife to get. The automobile is in a sense a time machine. It's man's effort to transcend the barriers of time and space. It serves as a public indication of our financial status and as a badge of our social position. Everybody has a car of some sort, and Moose remembers his very first race car. And often in his nightly dreams, he would return to his childhood days where his interest in racing was cultivated. Recalls he was much luckier in his earlier years of racing, but then he didn't have too many mechanical problems either. As a boy, Moose had his heroes and seldom missed the action and adventure at the Speedway. matter how you look at it, and everyone from 6 to 60 seems to have one kind or another. Either for transportation or for sports, from rallies to sprint car racing to big car racing with an international flavor. To drag racing, to driveway Grand Prix, or for almost any sport you care to name, the automobile is indeed necessary. In time, cars get old and wear out. Many end up here. Others here, or in speed shops just like it.
Down to the Keystone in California. 550, yeah. You got 2 extra pounds.
The winter months pass rapidly, especially for Moose, who hardly ever missed his nightly nap. The time would come, however, when he hoped that his visions of victory would soon become a reality. Safety equipment is a prime factor in auto racing. Roll bars are welded to the frame of the car. A safety belt and shoulder harness are installed. And a fire extinguisher. The springs and steering are reinforced. To make the car as light as possible, all unnecessary parts are removed, such as door panels. And so a race car is born. The winter months seem to have served as Mother Nature's deep freeze. Suspended animation, perhaps, for it seems like only yesterday that crowds cheered as those engines brought thrills to thousands. Now the crowds are back, almost as if they've never left, waiting impatiently for this new unleashed serpent of the Speedway. But it needs a number. 0 hour, for a long countdown, and that sleek steel thoroughbred began its career. The first time on the track, it began breaking records. And race rookie Moose Myers, this sleepy giant, awoke at last. He began by winning 16 features, then went on to smash a track record set by A.J. Foyt, the 2-time winner of the Indianapolis 500. Night after night, week after week, Moose Myers, Jimmy Martin, Jack Riley, and others gave the fans the action they wanted to see. The kind of action that motivates over 30 million Americans to attend stock car racing every year. October, time for the annual Hoosier Superstock 200. And for Moose, a time to really show his stuff. A win could put him in a late model or new car next year. This year, the stakes are high. A chance at Daytona. Time trials found Moose the fastest qualifier, sitting on the pole position in front. For those who follow stock car racing, it's a sport that cannot be equaled. The crowds love to see men in dangerous pursuits spinning wildly at high speeds, but they want to see him overcome his difficulty. Without the element of danger, there would be no auto racing. Each driver lives his life as long as he races on the thin edge of disaster. And contrary to public opinion, race drivers are scared, but not too scared to race. Moose is no exception. He loves to race. It's his life. The season, his third, was good to Moose with over 12 victories, 6 in a row. Trouble develops. A flat tire puts him into the pits. This could mean an end for what was otherwise an almost perfect season. The action continues. Bad luck begins to take its toll. Moose's crew works feverishly to get him back in the race. All the fans are excited. Back in action with precious time lost, Moose drives harder than ever to get back into the #1 position. The big difference between stock car racing and other types of motorsports is the fact that the stock car is much like the family car, and people enjoy watching them perform to see what their type can do. Without warning, a pileup on the third turn. Moose can't avoid the track. What started out to be his biggest moment ended in heartbreak. But that's a part of the game. It was a good season, however. The team won the honor of the trophy for the track championship and most earned points throughout the season. He also set a new track record. Normally through the season, the races are run at night. After Labor Day, races are held on Sunday afternoons. When cold weather begins to creep in and racing comes to a halt, it's sort of sad, and Moose, Jim, and Don and Bill don't like the feeling that sits in their stomachs when they know they cannot race for many months. They are usually the last to leave the Speedway, talking about past victories and future glories. Again, it was the end of October. The winds began to warn of winter's approach. The roar of engines had gone with the robins. The only engines to be heard here until next spring would be these. And for me, Stuart Reynolds, writer of adventure novels, it wouldn't be long before the last paragraph in my book will read, a famous mountain climber was once asked why he was willing to risk his life to climb Mount Everest. He said, because it's there. Risk offers a challenge, and there will always be those who will accept it. Stock car racing is the true spirit of adventure, and the sense of achievement is truly memorable for anyone fortunate enough to have ever been a part of it.